As you know, one of the highlights of E3 2018 was that CD Projekt Red finally showed off some gameplay of the highly anticipated Cyberpunk 2077. While the general public will have to wait a while longer before the studio feels comfortable showing live code, for members of the press, what they saw was near universally heralded as one of the most impressive, if not the most impressive of showcases at E3 2018. Now, I know some of you are a little frustrated that CD Projekt Red opted against showing gameplay to members of the public, but you can at least take comfort in the fact that when they finally do show something, it'll probably look and play even better than what I saw. CD Projekt Red has iterated time and again that they want to make sure that Cyberpunk 2077 is as presentable and as representative of the final product as possible before finally blowing the lid off of it, instead of rushing to show something that only represents an early vertical slice, which I think is a decision worth respecting. That's in large part why right before CD Projekt Red began showcasing the demo, one of the first things they courteously asked everyone who attended was basically to not record anything, to follow the proper private demo etiquette, and disclose all information as text or word of mouth. One individual who was invited to the private demo, however, opted against honoring CD Projekt Red's simple request. If you've been keeping up with Cyberpunk 2077 news, then you'll know that not long after E3 2018, recorded audio of one of the behind closed doors gameplay presentations was leaked on the internet. Turns out that the leaker had no qualms about identifying himself. His name is Shane Satterfield, a game journalist who founded a news outlet called SIFTD Games, or Sifted as it's pronounced. The leak was a prominent topic of discussion in episode 133 of his YouTube channel's Game Face series, and the things he had to say about the fallout of his actions were baffling, to say the least. Shane began by recapping how in the last episode of Game Face, he revealed that he captured audio of the behind closed doors demo with his iPhone, and when he asked his audience what to do with it, people told him to upload it on YouTube with some B-roll.
There was a huge kerfuffle this week with, I know I talked on Game Face last week about how we had the audio from the Cyberpunk 2077 demo that I had recorded while I was at the demo, and I kind of asked you guys what you wanted me to do with it. You guys all said, hey, just throw it underneath some B-roll and we'll listen to it. And so that's what I did. So
he spent some time sprucing up the audio and improving its quality, edited in some B-roll as requested, posted it on the Sifted YouTube channel, and unsurprisingly, within 30 minutes, CD Projekt Red copyright struck his video down.
We spent a lot of time sweetening the audio because I had recorded it with my iPhone, and so we threw it into an editing program and re-equalized all the audio, laid it all out in a timeline, looped a bunch of trailers and screenshots over top of it, put a disclaimer in the front of it, and put it up. And within 30 minutes, it was zapped by CD Projekt Red. They filed a copyright claim for it.
Now, the attitude Shane exuded while telling this story was discontent, noting how serious these kinds of copyright strikes are, as getting 3 of them will result in channel deletion, and that his video had been struck down before he could respond to CD Projekt Red's PR team telling him to take the video down, also questioning whether the studio even has the legal rights to do such a thing.
Not only did they file a claim, so there's different kinds of claims, but we got like a strike from CD Projekt Red, which means if you get like 3 of those within a certain period of time, your YouTube channel is deleted forever. So these kinds of strikes are a really, really big deal. So PR reached out to me and said, hey, we want you to take that down. I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about this. Before I even finished sending that email, the video had already been taken down by CD Projekt Red on YouTube. I'm not even going to get into the fact that legally they really did not have a right to do that. I mean, that was recorded on public property. It was not an NDA signed, but ultimately it is their copyright and their IP.
He then said that ultimately he yielded because it came down to Shane not wanting to ruin his relationship with CD Projekt Red and the PR person who set him up with an appointment for the private demo, noting how they have known each other for 15-some years.
Essentially what it came down to is I did not want to ruin the relationship, 1 with CD Projekt Red, and 2 with the PR person that set me up with the demo, because I've literally known the guy for like 15 or 16 years.
Shane touted how he could have simply uploaded the audio to his website instead of YouTube to get around being copyright struck, but decided not to do that because it wasn't worth it to burn any bridges with the studio, though he complained he felt he had no recourse on the matter.
It wasn't worth it to us to burn those bridges, to repost it on our servers. I couldn't repost it on YouTube because all they were going to do is just zap it again. So we really had no recourse whatsoever.
Now, as if things weren't bad enough already, here's where things take a turn for the worse. Shane proceeded to express resentment about how the audio he leaked was downloaded by someone before it got taken down, uploaded to some other audio hosting website, and spread around by major news outlets without crediting Shane, making it a point that his outlet Sifted didn't get any benefits from this ordeal, and how this was all to his detriment, particularly with him having a shaky relationship with CD Projekt Red.
And ultimately what ended up happening is someone downloaded the YouTube video and then ripped the audio out of it and then posted it on some corny like audios. I've never even seen that website before that they posted those files on. And then it was pointed to by some small website that was then pointed to by PC Gamer, and it became this thing that we never got credit for and ended up getting no benefit for whatsoever. In fact, it ended up all to our detriment, because now our relationship with CD Projekt Red and this PR guy, who I respect very much, is a little shaky, and we got absolutely nothing out of it.
Instead of acknowledging any wrongdoing, the point he highlighted was that he and his studio didn't get the attention and recognition he thought he deserved for leaking the audio, that he didn't deserve to get any flack or get into trouble for what he did. As a matter of fact, he's deluded enough to claim that the Cyberpunk 2077 audio leak wasn't actually a leak because he believes that he did nothing wrong or underhanded by recording and uploading the audio of a behind closed doors presentation.
A lot of people called it a leak. It was not a leak. I realize using the word leak is a lot sexier for a headline on your website or for your message board post. It was not a leak. I didn't go in and hide a microphone underneath a chair or anything like that. I walked in and stood there and recorded it on my phone in front of everybody. There was nothing secret about it. There was nothing malicious about it. It's all been portrayed wrong, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, the thing is, Shane, a leak isn't defined by the method by which material was recorded. It's defined by whether material that a company didn't intend to make public was made public. It doesn't matter whether you think what you did was legal or right, as long as you went against CD Projekt Red's request by recording and releasing the privately showcased material. You leaked content. The use of the term leak for headlines relating to this incident are far from erroneous or sensationalist, and how you are unable to comprehend this as a so-called professional journalist is beyond me. He then went on a tirade about how upset he was that someone on a podcast stated that whoever leaked the Cyberpunk 2077 audio was an asshole.
I saw on a podcast, somebody, I'm not going to say who, said whoever did that is an a-hole. And said, again, I'm not going to say who it was, but they called me an a-hole not knowing I was the one who did it. And I know this person, and this person knows me. And this person, by the way, makes their living off video game publishers and developers by hosting events from video game publishers and developers. So I can see where their perspective might be, that's an a-hole-ish thing to do. This person's not a journalist. What we're seeing here is a butting of the heads of someone who is a journalist. I mean, I don't want to call myself a journalist. That's for somebody else to say. But I've been trained to be a journalist, and I've been taught to handle things a certain way. And I've handled my business the last 20 years in this industry that way, the way I was taught and trained to do it.
Buddy, you don't have to be a journalist to recognize that what you did was an asshole thing to do. First of all, as someone who was present for the demo, I can tell you for a fact that CD Projekt Red did very politely tell attendees that no recording was allowed. Hell, if we listen to the beginning portion of Shane's leaked audio, you can hear the CD Projekt Red presenter say it clear as day.
Which absolutely no videos and pictures are allowed to be taken, but I think that's self-explanatory.
Now, I suppose one could argue that CD Projekt Red technically only said no pictures and videos, that they technically didn't say anything about audio, but come on, really? Does it really need to be spelled out that no direct recording of any kind, including audio, was allowed? Has he never been to a private demo before? Is this what Shane was taught as a so-called professional journalist? To go all lawyer on the minutia rather than read between the lines and show some integrity? I get that his kind of journalism can come in handy when dealing with having to uncover shady dealings or some kind of grand conspiracy, but such covert methods are woefully unnecessary when we're dealing with a private demo for a video game. I'm well aware that plenty of groundbreaking stories like, say, the whole Cambridge Analytica debacle have been exposed through more under-the-radar methods, but in this case, there was nothing to expose, and all Shane ended up doing was record shoddy audio against the wishes of a company that had all the best intentions, that had legitimate reasons for wanting to save a public showcase of Cyberpunk 2077 gameplay until a later time. From there, Shane continued to dig himself into a deeper hole by insinuating that journalists didn't have the foresight to record audio except for him.
The way I was taught and trained is you have to work to maximize the assets that you are afforded to create news or things that people care about and want to read or watch. And that's exactly what I did with this. I didn't break any rules. No one told me I wasn't allowed to record the audio. People saw me recording the audio. No one seemed to care. Also, for whatever reason, no one else seemed to have the foresight to do it except for me because no other recordings have popped up. I just did what I was trained to do. I was trained to take assets that I had and create something that people wanted to read or watch, and I did that.
Buddy, you don't have to be a true professional journalist to know how to hit record on an electronic device or to have the brilliant idea to do so. You think I couldn't have easily hit record on the very laptop that I was typing my notes on if I so desired? It's not that everyone else didn't have the foresight to record audio, it's that everyone but you decided to respect certain established norms between journalists and developers. You're not as uniquely clever as you think you are, Shane. You're just kind of an asshole. Shane then moved on to talk about how people just aren't used to his style of journalism, before noting that CD Projekt Red was kind enough to admit that they were partially wrong with the way they copyright struck Sifted's video.
Unfortunately, the way this industry works anymore, people just aren't used to it. Like, it was very interesting to deal with CD Projekt Red, who, by the way, ended up being awesome. They ended up removing the strike on YouTube and emailed me and said, look, we know we screwed up here. This is at least partially our fault.
I really hope CD Projekt Red didn't actually concede that any of this was even remotely their fault. They have absolutely nothing to apologize for beyond having trusted invited guests too much. CD Projekt Red could have taken the more corporate route and had people sign some NDA documents, turned this into a whole process. But they opted against that to keep things simple and more casual, and they trusted us to simply return a simple kindness. But Shane was seemingly too thick-headed to recognize that, or too self-indulgent to respect basic etiquette, believing that his style of journalism somehow entitles him to be an exception, and that in turn everyone else is just the worst journalist for it. Moving on, Shane starts talking about how hard it is to be a video game journalist these days, that there's not much left of it.
But I think this has just been one of the most blatant cases to me of it's hard to be a journalist in this industry anymore. I feel like Kotaku does a good bit of it. Kotaku breaks legitimate stories where it's not just handed to them on a platter and they're told, hey, you run this on Friday at 9 a.m. But there's not much of it left. Jason Schreier does it at Kotaku, but otherwise, it's just like a barren wasteland. The marketing and PR machine, in conjunction with influencers, YouTubers, and streamers, have created this environment where people just expect that's the way it's supposed to be. It was interesting reading the comments on any website that pointed to the files that have been ripped from us, and it was one of two things. Either this is pathetic, they're screwing CD Projekt Red, or holy crap, I can't wait to listen to this. So it's this environment that's been created in our industry where if you actually try to be a real journalist, you're going to end up getting chided for it. Not only chided by people who aren't journalists, but also by people who claim that they are journalists. And I have news for you, you're not. If you're taking money from a video game publisher or a video game developer to host their shows, you're not a journalist. You're on the take, you're a shill. And you've made the decision to do that, that's fine, but accept it. Don't try to play, I'm journalist now, I'm gonna tell another journalist how they should do their business, or I'm gonna call that journalist a name. Just admit that, hey, I'm willing to make money being a host however I can, and I'm going to let the other people do that stuff, and I'm not going to criticize them for it.
On the one hand, I don't disagree that it is hard to be a good video game journalist, and I do agree that very few actually do any substantial investigative journalism or break worthwhile stories, with Kotaku's Jason Schreier being one of the few true journalists in that regard. On the other hand, though, being a good journalist does not equate to trespassing basic journalistic etiquette or leaking material from a well-intended company's own turf. Doing so doesn't suddenly make you this renowned investigator, Shane. That's why not even a journalist like Jason Schreier opted to underhandedly nitpick the wording of CD Projekt Red's stipulations and use that as an excuse to do what you did. By leaking the private demo's audio, Shane, you didn't expose some deep dark secret, you simply put a wrench in a well-regarded game company's planned marketing campaign. I should also mention that anyone can press record on a small recording device at a private demo with such light security and then upload the captured material. It doesn't take a professional journalist to do what you did. What most journalists can't do, however, is go out there, establish and contact sources, and break well-rounded stories like Jason's investigative reports on matters like Destiny and Andromeda's troubled development, the story behind Visceral Shutdown, and the current state of Anthem. That's what real journalism looks like, and you recording audio with your phone while CD Projekt Red had their guard down trusting there could be mutual decency, you putting a damper on their well-intended plans by uploading that audio for recognition, doesn't hold a candle to that. If you ask me, being a good journalist isn't just about obtaining information, it's also about knowing how to be responsible with it, knowing the implications behind its public release, and having the right intentions. Shane then went back to questioning other outlets' journalistic integrity, and expressing how upset he was that someone called him an asshole.
I took umbrage with the person calling me an a-hole, even though they didn't know I was the one who did it, just off the cuff, when this person in particular is very well known in the industry for basically pay for play, payola. I'm going to go host your thing, now you give me 10 G's or whatever. So I just wanted to clear the air on GameFace.
Oh, the air is cleared all right. What's become abundantly clear is that regardless of what training you may have had as a journalist, you are too arrogant to own up to your indecent screw-ups. You asked yourself if you could, but you didn't stop to think if you should. So when you did, it all kind of blew up in your face, and that's kind of just your fault. Shane then went on to round up and summarize his side of the story, once again emphasizing how he didn't get any credit and contemplating how big his leaked audio could have been for his outlet Sifted, how it could have been a game changer for him.
Do I regret that I had a scoop and then we lost it? Absolutely. This could have been a game changer for Sifted, in all honesty. When I realized that I was the only one that had the audio, because it was like 4 days after the show had ended. And I knew other sites had more resources than we did, and it took me a while to get around to it. I knew if another site had it, they would have put it up right away. So I knew by the time we went to publish ours, I knew no one else had it. And I knew it could have just been huge for us. It could have drawn so many eyeballs to the site, so many eyeballs to GameFace, to whatever. It could have been a total game changer for us. And it wasn't a malicious thing. It was, I had the foresight to do it. I had the idea of how to implement it, and no one else did. It was just one of those cases that could have been a magic bullet for us, and it all got screwed up, and it did nothing for us ultimately. So
the fact that he keeps going on about how he and Sifted didn't get credit, how this didn't give him the renown and prestige he was expecting, goes to show where his priorities lie. This wasn't about doing the journalistic thing, it wasn't about trying to break a worthwhile story, it was about personal gain. It was about exploiting and sabotaging a studio with good intentions for personal benefit under the guise of so-called true journalism. But hey, you know what they say, be careful what you wish for. The leaked Cyberpunk 2077 audio did turn out to be huge for Sifted. It certainly drew eyeballs to their site and channel. Unfortunately, it wasn't the kind of attention they wanted. It was attention that damaged Shane and Sifted's integrity and credibility, both in the eyes of the public and in the eyes of game companies, who are unlikely to invite Shane back given what a rude guest he's proven to be, and Shane has nobody but himself and his arrogant attitude to blame. With how he presented himself in this video, with how stubborn he is about claims that this is what true journalism looks like, now that everyone knows his modus operandi, he's only made himself and his news outlet that much harder to trust or empathize with. Hopefully these are all things that Shane's brilliant foresight considered when he decided to blatantly exploit his position to leak material and then gloat about it. Shane finally concluded by expressing that he has no regrets with how he handled this situation before insulting journalists who didn't resort to his methods.
I don't regret how I handled anything. I think I handled the situation as best I could. I do regret that I had something that could have been a big difference maker for us, and it ultimately did nothing but made somebody call me an asshole. So that's the story. That's what happened with the audio for Cyberpunk 2077. I saw some other journalists trying to mock it and saying, well, what value is there? There's no value in it. There is absolutely value in that.
Clearly there is.
Yes, clearly. So
I wouldn't try to take it down.
I feel like there's a lot of salty dogs out there right now who are like, why didn't I think of that? Well, you didn't. And so instead of lashing out at us, even though you may not even know it was us that did it, maybe you should start thinking critically about your coverage next time instead of saying, oh, they told me I could do this. They told me I could do that, and I could only post it at Thursday at 1 a.m. Think for yourself. Like, be a journalist. Think critically about your job. Think about your assets and what you have access to, and be creative with them instead of just falling in line like a lemming, which is really, honestly, what the majority of the press is at this point. The fact that I got like any flack from anybody who calls himself a journalist over this is pathetic.
Man, what a shill. If Shane wants to talk pathetic, maybe he should take a long, hard look in the mirror. Now, it should come as no surprise that shortly after this video was uploaded, the public backlash against Shane was pretty unanimous. Shane probably believed in his arrogance that by saying what he said in this video, people would rally in support of him, but the complete opposite happened. What makes an already bad situation even worse is the way Sifted reacted to all this. If you look through the video's comment section, you'll strangely notice that there really aren't many comments there despite the decent amount of views the video has garnered. It should be pretty obvious that with the only comments present being ones that agree with Shane or that are less blunt and less critical, Sifted has essentially been removing comments or shadow banning users that provided disagreeable feedback. You can even see how when comments are expanded, far less comments appear than the number listed. Sifted has also disabled the likes and dislike bar for this video to hide how poorly it's been received. However, one gander at the likes and dislikes bar in following videos will reveal that their intentions to censor criticism against Shane's inability to be introspective about his actions has all but backfired. I'd also like to direct your attention to this comment thread of Game Face episode 133, where there is an amicable exchange about Shane's stance on his present circumstances. When one user commented on the fact that when CD Projekt Red said absolutely no videos or pictures, it should have been pretty obvious that they meant no recordings in general, Shane responded that CD Projekt Red didn't explicitly say no audio, and basically made the point that he's not on game publishers and developer side, that he's not setting out to make game companies happy, but rather that he's on the consumer side, that he's out to inform people. He also declared that those who support studios and not the free press have been trained by the marketing machine into becoming lemmings for companies. I do agree that journalism shouldn't be about making studios happy, it should be about keeping the public informed in an honest way. But there's a difference between being honestly informative versus sabotaging a company's benevolent plans for your own benefit. There's a difference between exposing shady aspects of a company and honestly expressing what you liked and disliked about a game versus just needlessly leaking information and circumventing clearly implied guidelines to draw in a crowd. The general public understands that game companies want to show off their games when they're ready to be shown. This is something that gamers respect, as frustrating as waiting can be at times. Most people would just rather wait for a proper showcase, especially from a renowned company like CD Projekt Red, rather than have their plans ruined by an overzealous journalist. All Shane ultimately did was take good intentions and shit all over them, and most people recognize that this is just an all-around dishonorable thing to do, regardless of whether he was within his legal rights or not. It's not about the public being lemmings or falling in line, it's just about having a semblance of respect for people who are working very hard to make a game we are all looking forward to, that we all want to see succeed, that we are all rooting for, developers, journalists, and gamers alike. And Shane just went in there and dealt a low blow because he was enticed by the amount of attention and coverage his leak could garner. Ultimately, all he's done with his so-called professional journalism, from the way he unnecessarily leaked information, to the way he arrogantly responded when he justifiably got flack and got into trouble, to the way he's shunning anyone who disagrees with his methods, is dig himself and his news outlet into a deep hole they may not be able to get out of. Hopefully Shane will understand where he went wrong and correct course. Hopefully he won't resort to doing what he did again. but given his arrogant attitude, he doesn't seem like the kind of guy who's keen on admitting the error of his ways or willing to show consideration for respected conventions. In that case, well, I know that if I were a game company, Shane wouldn't be my first choice to invite to a communal gaming event, especially if it's a private event. These are just one man's thoughts and opinions anyway. I'd love to hear what your take is on all of this in the comments below. With that, I would like to end this news update. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoy my content and would like to support this channel directly, consider donating on Patreon. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Yong Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Yong out.